process which we started in Claygate in Surrey, where Ron Ayres, veteran aerodynamicist of the Bristol Bloodhound fame, Glenn Barsher and I came up with a basic design. And we said what we'd do is create something which was completely different. So there's an awful lot of innovation there. We'd go for twin Rolls-Royce spays, giving 44,000 pounds of thrust, a long, thin nose to minimize the shock waves. We'd put the cockpit between the engines, and this way we'd have a long, thin fuselage in order to minimize directional and pitch stability. 60% of the weight on the front wheels, which is what we like. Of course, the aerodynamics are absolutely key on all this. Rocket sleds had run up to Mach 9 times the speed of sound. And there was a very famous Colonel Stapp who personally did all the escape experiments for the space industry. And this man had been up to 620 miles an hour, sitting on what looked like a sort of bar stool on a tethered rocket sled. And I'm very fortunate to have his books and some of his postcards. He was an amazing man. Wind tunnels were out, of course, for something like this because we needed a supersonic moving ground. And so the only way out of this thing was to use CFD, computational fluid dynamics, which in those early days in the 1990s, of course, were right at the very, very beginning. So we kicked off with the flight program, which is a joint venture between Swansea University and Imperial College, and we started doing our CFD work. So here you can see the layout of the car, the two huge jet engines, the very small nose, long, thin, pointed nose, driver sitting between the two jet engines, and the rear wheels as far back as we possibly could in order to give us some good directional stability. The great thing about CFD, of course, is that we can get ideas of pressure. And of course, it's very crucial to get the pressures because basically, if we get a bodywork failure on this car, that's the end of it. Yeah, we'll just simply torch in and just blow the thing to a million pieces, as happened, as we know, with the space shuttle accident. And here you can see the car turning around. The driver, you can see, is put in the middle there, just on the CG. Great place, actually. You can see very well forward there. Not too good from side to side, but you're not going to get overtaken in this. And then the back end, well, you've got a red area there. We put the brake parachutes. We got that bit wrong. When we're running really fast, we've got 150 feet of flame from each engine, curls around the back and burns off the parachute. So we didn't get this quite right. And here you can see the shape coming up. You can see we're going transonic there. You can see the big expansion wave just in front of the cockpit. Here's the two-dimensional waves here. And you can see the shocks come out about 150 foot on either side of the car and 500 feet in the air. We know that because one of the microlights got caught in them. And here you can see the huge shock wave at the front, which creates, of course, the first bit of the bang-bang as the car passes. Now, over the cockpit, you can see there's also a small shock, and that screams. So this is the great moment. We've got to go ahead and build it. And we cracked it. We actually held a piece of paper which said we could do it. Amazing. Right, let's go and do it. And this is where all plans went wrong, of course. We believe that the big British companies that would support this fantastic company project, particularly if they got British in their name. After all, you know, we got quite a pedigree. We already held the world land speed record. We brought it back for Britain after the Americans had held it for 19 years. But sadly, we were to be heavily disappointed because the famous British companies were very, very different from their PR image. They were absolutely dead scared of the whole thing, didn't want to be involved. Sadly, the sort of innovation and the daring do, which we used to have in the 1950s and the 60s and the 70s, just wasn't there. So we got a real problem. Somehow or other, we got to do this. But the supporters club kept the whole thing going, kept the money coming in by buying merchandise while we pulled ourselves together and got ourselves sorted out. The late and very great King Hussein of Jordan allowed us to come to Jordan in May 1997. We were only there for 13 days. The teamwork was fantastic. We got the car up to 540 miles an hour. We broke the rear suspension, but we knew we'd probably do that because the desert itself was very, very hard. And we knew we'd gone as fast as we possibly could in Jordan. So that was it. So basically now we've got to come back to Britain, and we've got to make enough money to go off to America 2 or 3 months later and go and challenge the Americans. I was mortified because on the last night in Jordan, I was doing all the cash flows, and we needed 600,000 quid. How are you going to make 600,000 quid in 60 days? Well, we did it. We actually did it. And we did it via a number of small sponsors. We did it via the internet, where people bought 250,000 gallons of fuel for the airplane, and also from the readers of the Daily Telegraph who sent in the money. So we did it. And it really set all sorts of new records, and we've learned an enormous amount from it, which of course we're using in Bloodhound.